How strange. It does say we're at 0 viewers. And yet here you are. That is weird. Twitch likes to be all funny like that. But I'm sure it'll correct itself, like, soon-ish. Hopefully. Oh! Right, Denger, you're here too. The fuck? Ah! Strange. Twitch just is trying to suppress me. Twitch is trying to suppress, my readings. They're like, you can't do audiobooks. That's illegal. Yeah, I got shadow blocked by Twitch themselves. They were like, you're not a booby streamer? Out of here. Yeah. Oh no, hey, there we go. It corrected itself. I gotta clean my glasses before we do anything else, because they're filthy. They're disgusting. How's everybody doing tonight? Are y'all good? Y'all comfy? Y'all cozy? I'm gonna take your silence as you're so comfy right now that you can't even respond. Actively committing war crimes right now. Good. Good. That is the best thing you can do while reading Worm, is actively commit more than 18 war crimes in the state of Bosnia and Herzegovina in the year 1988. Don't know if I should make that joke on Twitch. I probably would not appreciate that. Who cares? There's no Twitch admins in the chat. You can say what you want. Call you all stupid. We'll get started in like 10 minutes. 10 or so minutes. Wait for everyone else to hop on. Anyone else who wants to read some Horm. You recognize the Bosnian genocide? Sorry. Nothing lost. Oh god. That was a dark joke. That was not an okay joke to make. Oh man, that was bad. Yeah, is right. I feel bad. I hope none of you are actually Bosnian. I hope no Bosnians are actually watching this. Oh god. Ugh. I feel all gross. That wasn't an okay joke to make. I'm very sorry. You know, I just realized I'm gonna get canceled in 20 years because of that. Yeah, I probably am. They're gonna dig up some like other. They're gonna hack into my fucking Discord calls and find out like all the other off-color jokes I've made. They're gonna hack into some of our phone calls and they'll just be like, "Duh, you say bad thing about Jews," and I'm gonna be like, "I am Jewish. You morons." We'll be running for lead psychologist of the FBI and someone will unearth that joke from the recesses of the internet. Probably. Most likely. Yeah, they're gonna hack into like either my Discord calls, my phone calls, and they'll find like some joke I made about Jews, and I'll be like, I am Jewish. You fools. I'm making fun of my own people here. You can do that. It's a privilege you have. No, I gotta take an ancestry test and find out if I'm actually Bosnian or not. I don't think I am. I don't. We're off to a really, really strong start here. Nah, I never said that. Oh man, we're no. Oh man, we're really Who was the third viewer that just left? Oh god. Oh god. Uh-oh. That was some rando who is now going to report me to the fucking Twitch police. It's better that way, trust me. Trust me. It's better that way. Oh man. We're off to a strong start, I gotta say. Probably just, like, killed a potential viewer. He was like, this guy makes the worst jokes. This is horrible. How does anyone watch this? This isn't reading. This is sitting here making offensive jokes. God. I hope that was, like, someone I knew. Just... Can you stop with the Bosnian genocide, please? I don't want this to be the topic of tonight's stream. Please, I beg of you, do not make this the topic of tonight's stream. Oh god. We'll give it 4 more minutes, and we can start. If it's only just you two in the chat, you'll survive. We're Bosnia. Leaving 4 minutes? Oh, it's a shame. I guess you'll miss out on this super cool chapter of Worm. It's really, really cool. We're almost Bosnia. Just all of a sudden my stream gets like brigaded by the Bosnia Peace Corps. Just the chat being flooded in Bosnian. Oh no. Changing tonight's stream to denying the Bosnian genocide. I'm gonna be outside my window. Not so peaceful. Oh god. Ooh boy. We're not off to a strong start. Okay, before I go back to making shit jokes, I was wondering, I don't know if I'll be able to get it together this week, but potentially for next week, I might live up to my name of actually being a fucking music streaming channel. And I want to figure out how to get my guitar to you guys to hear my guitar through Twitch, Twitch audio. I was wondering if you guys either wanted to do like next week a on Tuesdays if we run out of shitty material to read, because I don't think we'll be running out of Empress Teresa, because I think we still have two more chapters of Empress Teresa, I think. No. I think we have 3 actually. Because we have chapter 6 to read as well. Or was chapter 6 the one we just read? Let's go on Empress Teresa's website for a second. Hold on. I want to figure out how many free chapters of Empress Teresa we have left. Hold on just a second. Oh my god, to read the website on the phone, not good. Very bad. Oh my god. Alright, there we go. Yeah, okay, we have 3 chapters of Empress Teresa left. So, it's probably not going to happen for the next 3 weeks. Because we'll be doing Worm and Empress Teresa. I thought Grunch Making started for Gruncho movies and books. Yeah, it does, actually. It does. But yeah, I'll figure out how to get my guitar running through Twitch. I mean, we can maybe do like a little guitar hangout video or a video stream, or maybe I can do like a music writing session. I can take you guys through some music theory talk, which I'm sure will just enthrall you guys. Oh, hello. Ink is my boy. Okay. I've had like a really good couple of days as far as writing stuff goes. And I wanted to share that with some of you guys and take you through my writing process. Should read your book aloud at some point? No, not at all. No, that's for everybody else to read. No, I'm not reading my fucking book out loud. No. Well, that's really too bad. Then I'm really sorry. I don't know what to tell you. But it's too bad. I'm sorry you can't read, but you know. No, I'm not reading my fucking book out loud. I'm not. I'm just not. I'm not. Sorry. I will have a fucking anxiety attack and I will die. On the spot. Like, you have no idea. Why not? Because I have this thing where I hate like listening to my own stuff or reading my own things. Like I revise so quickly because I will like I just hate reading it. Like once it's out there and I revise it, I will not read it. Like it's different when I'm reading it in my head and I'm like, okay, I get to fix this, I get to fix that. But when I'm reading it out loud, I'm like, oh. So if that made any sense whatsoever, yeah. Yeah, no, it doesn't really matter. Like I know that a lot of people have this same issue. Like I know a lot of actors can't watch. Like I can't watch myself in any video because I'm like, oh. A lot of actors have like the same issue with watching their movies. We are your friends. You just want me to read the fucking book. You don't even like. No, you just want me to read the book. That's it. You just want me to read. You want me to like. You want yourself to bypass the hard part, which is reading the fucking book, catching up with the chapters, and making sure you read it weekly, so you're not like, super far behind. No, I will not. No matter what anyone says. No, fuck off, everybody. Hold on, I gotta find a fucking meme. You know what, Denger? Can you do me a favor? Can you go through our Discord and find the Warby video? Cause Magi can't find it. We'll miss the funny voices. That's too bad. You can make them up in your head. That's the beauty of reading. You can just make them up. You can pretend that every female character is me speaking higher than I usually do. Because that's the only voice that I can do as a woman. I tried to have Vista, who's a fucking 13-year-old girl, be an actual, like, 13-year-old, like, guest for more funny voices. Yeah, invite. You know what? You know what? If you guys really want to do like an out loud reading, go to someone's house. Go to one of your houses. Anyone's house is open, I'm sure. Go have a little dinner night and go read. Go read aloud in like a circle. There. I solved your problem. Just don't invite me. Even if you send me Snapchats or like, I don't even know if people still fucking use Snapchat. Like videos of you like being like, wow, Zach, this party's super cool, you're missing out, man. I'll be like, okay, that's too bad. It's terrible. Irresponsible advice during plague times. Okay, yeah, but I don't think any of you have COVID. And if y'all are like, you know, safe about it, I believe in you. I believe in you. Dog noises. There are no dogs in my book, unfortunately. There's no Brutus interlude chapter. No character even reaches the depth of Brutus has in my book, because every character's bad. I shouldn't shit talk my own book like that. I love all my characters. It's a dumpster fire, but it's my dumpster fires. Alright. Give it like one more minute, so I can cool myself off after that heated fucking argument I have in my own chat. You're overthrowing Grunge music. Do it! Do it! Then who will read Worm to you? Then who will read Worm to you? We're adding dogs. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, I'd assume that humankind would have, you know, still have dogs in 3,000 years. I just don't think that they would be on, like, a military space station, that's all. If you don't read it aloud, then we will change the book. You can write fan fiction, I don't care. You can write fan fiction. Sure, go right ahead. I don't care. Futuristic canine, you're like fucking Wolfenstein. Yeah. Alright. Alright. German Shepherds equipped with future tech, yeah. Yeah, like mech dogs. That'd be cool. That'd be real cool. Don't call it fanfiction. Well, that's what it is! That's what it, if you want to change the story, that's a fanfiction! If you are changing the original story to your whim, that's a fan fiction. It is, you are a fan and you are changing the fiction. It is a fan fiction. It's not to us. Well, what is it then? What do you, a headcanon? What do you want to call it? I can't believe I'm having this argument. I should be starting the fucking stream already. We're going overtime tonight. Just because you guys are driving me to the brink. We're going overtime tonight. My blood pressure is going up. Do we get a halftime show? No. No, halftime show has been canceled because you guys are rude. Halftime show has been canceled. No halftime show for you. Yeah, cry about it. Cry about it. The halftime show has been canceled. Yeah. Well, he had a good idea, and I was going to do it for you guys, and then you guys sit here and yelled at me to read my own fucking story. No. It's not how I operate. No, no. Alright. Everybody ready to start some Worm? Now that we're done lambasting Zach for his good decision making, when will that one not give him a panic attack on stream? Everybody get comfy, nice and cozy. We can start whenever I'm ready. Wait for Bruce, the good boy. Yeah, there's I don't know which happens first, but they're like, well, all I'm saying is there are two really cool fight scenes, and then Worm gets like taken to a whole other level. Like, we're getting so close. My favorite, like my first part where this really like blew my fucking mind. I'm so excited to share with you all. All right, Hive 5.1. The place was nondescript, a hole in the wall in the midst of a long street of hole-in-the-wall businesses. Everything was run down. For every given store or restaurant you passed, you could only guess if the place was still open or not. The pub had a sign on it reading Stomer's Rock. There were iron bars on the windows and the curtains were drawn, but it would have been more unusual if that wasn't the case. It was that kind of area. The paint on the outside was peeling, and the rust from the bars had bled onto gray-white paint below the windows. As we stepped inside, it became clear that Somer's Rock was one book that should be judged by its cover, like Empress Teresa. It was dim, dingy, and depressing. The wood floor was stained with the same dark gray as the counter of the bar, and the curtains and tablecloths were dark green. And the only real color, or brightness, if you could call it that, was the yellow light cast by ancient burnt light bulbs. There were 3 people in Somer's Rock when we arrived. One was a solemn-looking 20-something girl with brown hair and a slightly wrinkled server's uniform, who glanced at us as we came in but made no attempt to welcome us. There were 2 identical twins behind the bar in the far corner, probably her older brothers, busying themselves with washing glasses and studying, studiously ignoring us. One of them was wearing a dress shirt and an apron, looking the part of a bartender, while the other had a black t-shirt under a Hawaiian shirt. Beside the contrast in fashion, they were identical in length, haircut, features, and expression. A group of tables had been pulled together with chairs arranged around them, but we walked past them to a corner booth. Tattletale, Bitch, Gru, and Regent and I all arranged ourselves on the worn cushioned benches. I was calling them that in my head, really, because they weren't Lisa, Brian, Rachel, and Alec. We were all in costume. As we settled in, the girl with the dour expression approached us, setting her notepad on the table, and then stared at me, the look in her eyes almost challenging. She didn't say a word. Coke? I ventured, feeling uncomfortable by the look. Taylor is not a hydro homie. Taylor, that's unhealthy.
No, Skitter, Telltale nudged me. She's deaf. If you want something, write on the pad.
To demonstrate, she reached across the table, took the pad, and wrote T, black. I took her cue and wrote down my order, then passed the note across the table to the boys and Bitch. The girl gave me an ugly look as she walked away with our orders. Of course you did, because you ordered fucking Coca-Cola. It had been a week since the incident with Bakuda. Lisa and Brian had stopped by several times as I spent my days in bed, giving me updates on the situation as it unfolded. At one point, they'd even brought Alec and Bitch, and I'd been very relieved my dad hadn't been home at the time. Alec and Bitch weren't the polite house guests that Lisa and Brian were, and I suspected their presence and personalities would have raised more questions with my dad than they put to rest. Apparently someone at the PHQ had named my costume self Skitter. Lung had overheard something about it and had now spread it throughout the city in the aftermath of his escape, which implied he was probably looking for me. As a newspaper article raised our possible involvement in the bombings that had taken place as adversaries of Bakuda, my name had once again had come up yet again, so it looked like it was maybe catching on. I didn't love it, but I didn't love any names I'd come up with, so I could cope. It seemed that we arrived a few minutes early because the rest of the guests arrived within seconds of each other as the servers brought us our drinks. Kaiser came through the door with a girl on each arm, blondes with measurements like Playboy models. Kaiser wore armor from head to toe, elaborately worked and topped with a crown of blades, the leader of the Empire 88. The twins went by the name Fenja and Menja, and were decked out in Valkyrie-style armor featuring countless little steel wings along with closed-faced helms. Had to admit, Kaiser liked his heavy hitters.
These two could grow 3 stories tall, and they were hundreds times more durable when they were. Purity entered a few steps behind him, with several others following her. She was dressed in a white costume without any markings or symbols on it, but the fabric glowed softly. Her white hair and eyes glowed too, but it was more like they were made of heated magnesium than anything else. I couldn't look in her direction without getting spots in my eyes. My mask had tinted lenses designed to reduce glare. Nazi Magneto, yeah, that's him. The people had come in with Purity with the other members of Empire 88, Krieg, Knight, Fog, and Hookwolf. It was interesting to see because as far as I'd known, while every one of them had been members of the Empire 88 at some point in time, Purity had gone solo, while Knight and Fog had splintered off to form their own duo in Boston not long after, all reunited apparently. That wasn't even Kaiser's entire team. Aside from the rare exception like Lung reaching out to Bakuda when she'd been at Cornell, it seemed that most groups recruited new members from within their own city. Kaiser was different. He was one of the better-known American villains with a white supremacist agenda, and people sharing his ideals were either recruited from other states or they came to him. Most didn't stay with him too long for whatever reason, but it still made him the Brockton Bay resident with the most raw parahuman muscle at his beck and call. Kaiser sat at one end of the table in the center of the room, his people finding seats and chairs at the tables behind him. Purity didn't relax or order drinks, though. She sat in a chair a few feet behind Kaiser, folded her arms, and crossed one ankle over the other, settling in to watch the proceedings. From my research online and digging through old newspaper articles, I knew Purity could create light and charge it with kinetic energy. She was like a human flashlight. If the light from the flashlight could punch through brick walls and tear city buses in half. As far as raw firepower went, she was up near the top of the list, a flying artillery turret. Coyle entered after the Empire 88, all the more conspicuous because he was alone. No backup, no show of force. He was taller than Gru, but he was thin to the point of being skeletal. His skin-tight costume covered him head to toe, lacking any eye holes or openings for his nose and mouth, and the way it clung to his skin let you see his individual ribs and joints. The costume was black, and the only design on it was a white snakeskin, with the head starting at Coyle's forehead, the tail extending down the back of his head, looping and winding over his entire body before finally ending at one of his ankles. He sat at the end of the table opposite Kaiser. When I first read this, I always imagined Coyle kind of looking like Black Mask, but I see that I was very wrong with that assumption. But I always imagined Coyle looking a lot like Black Mask from the DC comics. What's his deal? I whispered to Tattletale. Coyle? Can't say as far as his powers go, but he's one of the more powerful players in town. Considers himself a chess master. You know, like a master strategian, tactician. Controls more than half of downtown with squads of top-notch personnel in the highest-end gear. Ex-military from around the world. If he even has powers, he's only the one in his organization who does. I nodded. Almost the opposite of Kaiser in that department. I might have asked more, but the others were streaming into the room. Faultline, second best girl. I knew of her from my research. She was 20-something, and her straight black hair was in a long, bristling ponytail. Her costume was weird, approximating something like a blend of riot gear, a martial arts uniform, and a dress. 4 people entered the room with her, and 2 guys in the group were instantly the weirdest people in the room. I knew them by name, too. Neuter wasn't wearing a shirt, shoes, or gloves, which made it all the more apparent that his skin was neon orange from head to toe. He had light blue eyes, dark red hair that looked wet, and a 5-foot-long prehensile tail. Gregor the snail was morbidly obese, average height, with no hair on his entire body. His skin was milky white and slightly translucent, so you could see shadows beneath where his organs were. Like someone else might have bad acne, he had bits of shell or scales crusting his skin. They looked almost like barnacles, but there was a spiral shape to them. He looks like Helsing Ultimate starved Alucard. Kind of. That's a good. Yeah. That's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah. 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 You wouldn't think that they were close by their body language, silence, and the sheer difference in approach, but both had matching tattoos. Neuter was just above his heart, while Gregor's was on his upper arm. It looked like the Greek omega symbol, but upside down. Maybe a stylized U. Ooh, foreshadowing. The other two girls in Fault Line's group were very normal by contrast. Labyrinth wore a dark green robe and mask with lines all over them. Spitfire wore in a red and black costume with a gas mask. I was surprised when Fault Line deliberately walked by our table on her way to her seat, taking the long way around. As she passed us, she looked over Tattletale and me and sneered a little before taking the chair to Kaiser's right. I'm gonna go before all the seats are taken. Is that cool? Gru spoke and the rest of us nodded. Gru sat between Fault Line and Coil. And was that with Fault Line and you? I murmured to Tattletale. History? Nothing important, she replied. Regent leaned forward. She and Tattletale had been feuding a little. Fault Line upped the ante when she poached Spitfire from us when we were in the middle of trying to recruit her. Can't say why Fault Line doesn't like Tattle, but I know Tattletale hates it when people act like they're smarter than her, and Fault Line is smarter than her. Ow, fuck, that hurt. Tattletale kicked him under the table. They're mercenaries, right? I asked. Tattletale nodded. Fault Line's crew does anything short of murder. You can say her personality sucks, you can say her powers suck, but I'll admit she's very good at finding hidden strengths in people that work for her. See those two guys? When it comes to powers, they got a bad roll of the dice. Became freaks that couldn't hope to pass in normal society. Wound up homeless or living in the sewers. There's a story behind it, but they became a team, and she made them effective. And they've only messed up one or two jobs so far. Gotcha, I said. Impressive. Keep in mind, though, we haven't screwed up any. We're 100%. They've done something like 3 times as many jobs as us, Regent pointed out. But we haven't failed any jobs is the important thing, Tattletale stressed. Another group arrived. It was like you could see the wave of distaste wash over the faces in the room. I'd seen references on the web and news articles about these guys, but they weren't the sort you took pictures of. Skidmark, Moist, Squealer. 2 guys and a girl. A lot of them proving that capes weren't necessarily attractive, successful, or immune to the influence of substance abuse. Hardcore addicts and dealers who happened to have superpowers. Skidmark wore a mask that covered the top of his face. The lower half was dark skin with badly chapped lips and teeth that looked more like shelled pistachio nuts than anything else. He stepped up to the table and reached for a chair. Before he could move it, though, Kaiser kicked the chair out of reach, sending it toppling onto its side across the floor.
The fuck?
Skidmark snarled. You can sit in a booth, Kaiser spoke. Even though his voice was completely calm, like he was talking to a stranger about the weather, it felt threatening. This is 'cause I'm black, huh? That's what you're all about, yeah? Still calm, Kaiser replied. You can sit in a booth because you and your team are pathetic, deranged losers that aren't worth talking to. The people at the table, I don't like them, but I'll listen to them. This isn't the case with you. Fuck you, what about this guy? Skidmark pointed to Gru. I don't even know his name and he's sitting. Fault Line answered him. His team hit the Brockton-based central bank a week ago. They've gone up against Lung several times in the past and they're still here, which is better than most. Not even counting the events of a week ago, he knows about the ABB and he can share that information with the rest of us. She gave Gru a look that made it clear he didn't have a choice if she wanted to sit at the table. He dipped his head in the smallest of nods in response. We discussed things beforehand and agreed on what details we'd share. What have you done that's worth a seat at the table? She asked Skidmark. We hold territory. You hold nothing, Gru answered, raising his voice, his powers warping it. You're cowards that hold on to areas nobody else cares about, making drugs and selling them to children. We sell to everyone, not just find a booth. Gru's echoing voice interrupted him. Skidmark gave him a look, then looked at the others sitting around the table. Every set of eyes he could see behind his mask was staring him down. Assholes, puckered, juicy assholes, all of you. Skidmark snarled, stomping off the booth where his teammate already sat. The serving girl picked up the fallen chair and restored it to its position at the table, not meeting anyone else as she walked up to the table where Kaiser's people sat, put down her notepad and waited for everyone to run down her order. It struck me just why the pub had a deaf waitress. Makes sense. Who's this? Oh, okay. I'll be taking a chair, I think, spoke someone at the door. Most heads turned to check out a male figure in a costume with red and black top hat. It gave me a Baron Samedi vibe. His teammates followed him into a room, all in matching costumes of red and black, differing only by design. A girl with a sun motif, a guy with bulky armor and a square mask, and a creature so large it had to crawl on its hands and knees to get through the door. It was hard to describe. Approximately something like a four-armed hairless gorilla with a vest, mask, and leggings in red and black style red and black style its team was wearing, 6-inch claws dipping each of its fingers and toes. The travelers, yes, Coyle spoke, his voice smooth. You're not local. You could call us nomadic. What was happening here was too interesting to pass up, so I decided we'd stop by for a visit. The guy with the top hat pulled off the first really formal bow I'd ever seen in my life. I go by Trickster. You know the rules here? Gru asked Trickster. We've been to similar places, I can guess. No fighting, no powers, no trying to bait out others into causing trouble, or everyone else in the room puts aside all other grievances to put you down. Close enough. It's important to have neutral ground to meet. Have civilized discussion. I won't argue with that. Please continue as if I wasn't here. When Trickster took a chair and put his feet up on the table, nobody complained, though skid marks looked like he wanted to kill someone. The rest of the travelers settled in a booth not far from us. The gorilla thing sat on the floor, and it was still large enough to be at eye level with his teammates. Coyle dipped his head in a nod and steeped his fingers. When he spoke, his voice was smooth. That should be everyone. Seems Lung won't be coming, though I doubt any of us are surprised, given the subject of tonight's discussion. The ABB, Kaiser replied. 35 individuals confirmed dead and over 100 hospitalized in the past week. Armed presence on the streets. Ongoing exchange of gunfire between the ABB members and the combined forces of the police and military. They have raided our businesses and bombed places where they think they might be operating. They have seized our territories, and there's no indication they intend to stop anytime soon. Coyle clarified the situation for all present. It is inconvenient, Kaiser spoke. They're being reckless, Faultline said. She made it sound like it was a crime on par with killing kittens. Coyle nodded. Which is the real concern? The ABB can't sustain this. Something will give, and they will self-destruct sooner or later. They will likely cease to be an issue. Had things played out differently, we could look at this as a good thing. Our problem is the actions of the ABB are drawing attention to our fair city. Homeland Security and military forces are establishing a temporary presence to assist in maintaining order. Heroes are flocking to the city to support the Protectorate in regaining control of matters. It is making business difficult. Bucket is at the center of this. Gru joined the dialogue. Lung may be the leader, but everything that hinges on that girl. She was recruited by orchestrating raids of people's homes while they slept, and subduing them and implanting bombs in their heads. She then used those bombs to coerce her victims into kidnapping more. No less than 300 in total now. Every single one of her soldiers know that if they don't obey, Bakuda can detonate the bombs. All of them are willing to put their lives on the line because the alternatives are either certain death or watching their loved ones die out of their failure. Taking her down is our ultimate goal, but she's rigged her bombs to go off the second her heart stops. It's a little more complicated than a simple assassination. He reached into the darkness that shrouded his chest and withdrew a package. She videotaped the ambush she pulled on my group a week ago, and it left behind when she ran. I've made copies. Maybe you'll find those useful for getting a better understanding of her. Gru handed a burned CD to everyone at the table. This was our show of strength. The video showed everything from the point Bakuda had liquefied Park Ji-hoo to the second the bomb she had set off in her ranks. As the second bomb had gone off in the midst of Bakuda's group, the camera had dropped briefly, recorded the sounds of guns going off and everyone being darkened by Gru's power, but it didn't show us running. It didn't reveal our weaknesses, how lucky we'd been to get away, or how bad the circumstances they had really been. It did let everyone know that we'd been up against what we've been up against. Let them know that we'd come out fine and that we have been able to attend this meeting. That would do as much for our reputation as anything else. I wasn't 100% recovered from my concussion, and Alec was complaining of twinges in his arm still, but Brian had stressed how important it was that we attend, given the illusion that our team was intact and untouched. Seeing the other groups in their subtle posturing, I knew he'd been right. So, Coyle let the word hang in the air as he cracked each knuckles of his right hand individually. We're all in agreement. The ABB cannot be allowed to continue operating. There were nods and murmurs of agreement from around the table, some from the various villains gathered around the room. Then I suggest we establish a truce. Not just everyone here, but between ourselves and the law. I contacted authorities and let them know that until this matter is cleared up, our groups will restrict our legal activity to only what is absolutely essential to our business, and we will enforce the same for those doing business in our territories. That would let police and forces and military focus entirely on the ABB. There would be no violence, infighting between our groups, grabs for territory, thefts, or insults. We band together with those we can tolerate for guaranteed victory, and we ignore those we cannot cooperate with. Just saying my group won't be getting directly involved with this without a reason, Faultline spoke. We won't be going after the ABB unless they get in the way or someone pays my rates. It's the only workable policy when you're a cape for hire. And just so we're clear, if it's the ABB paying, my team is going to be on the other side of things. Unfortunate, but you and I can talk after this meeting is done. I'll prefer to keep matters simple, Coyle said. You're okay with the other terms? Keeping on the lowdown, not kicking up a fuss in other groups? That's status quo with my group anyway. Good. Kaiser? I think it's acceptable. Kaiser agreed. I was talking to my group about doing something not too different from what Coyle just proposed. Gru spoke. Yeah, we're cool with it. Sure, Trickster said. Not a problem. We're in. Hands were shaken around the table. Funny, Tattletale murmured. I turned away from the scene and looked at her. What? Aside from Gru and maybe Faultline, everyone's already plotting how they can use the situation to their advantage or fuck over the others. I turned back to the scene and the villains sitting around the table. It dawned on me just how much sheer destructive power potential was gathered in this room. This could get complicated. Hive 5.2. Coyle addressed the room. Then our major piece of business concluded tonight. Anything else before we go our separate ways? Offers, announcements, grievances? I've got a complaint. A man on the other side of the table spoke. Heads turned to Kaiser's group, Hookwolf. He wore a mask with little more than a piece of sheet metal cut and shaped to resemble a wolf's features, attached to his head with straps of black leather. He had a chain threaded through the belt loops of his jeans, sporting a heavy metal belt buckle. The buckle featured a wolf superimposed on a swastika, the same image that he had tattooed on one of his biceps. The opposite arm simply had E88 on it. Outside of the mask and the belt buckle, you couldn't really say it was a costume. He was shirtless, shoeless, and hairy. His blonde hair was long and greasy, and he had thick hair on his chest, stomach, and arms. Harpoon-like spears of metal that curled like fish hooks radiated out on his shoulders, elbows, and knees, all bristling with barbs or wickedly serrated edges. Nobody to date had ever escaped the birdcage. The name had been coined for the supervillain prison in British Columbia. Hookwolf, though, had escaped on no less than 2 occasions while being transported there. He was a killer, and thought nothing of murdering people if they didn't fit the Aryan ideal. He turned to our table, very pale blue eyes visible through the slits in his metal mask. My complaint's with her. What's the issue? Gru's voice was calm, but it looked like he was generating a bit more darkness around him than he should have been, making himself look a fraction bigger. I wondered if he knew he was doing it. The crazy one. Hellhound. She. Bitch. Bitch interrupted him. Only the pansy-ass heroes call me Hellhound. It's bitch. Don't fucking care. Hookwolf growled. You attacked my business. Set your fucking dogs on my customers. Luckily I wasn't there, whore. Gru gave Bitch a long look, then spoke to Hookwolf. That's the kind of risks you run doing business in Brockton Bay. Capes can and will get in your way, hero or villain. Hookwolf glared at him. It's a matter of respect. You want to fuck with my business? We're not at war. You let me know if you've got an issue first. Let me decide if I want to move shop. You mean give you a reason I'm coming? Bitch spat the words. That's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. Just so you know, moving to a different neighborhood won't be good enough. You open up another dogfighting ring, I'll be visiting that one too. Oh, that's what she'd done. I glanced at Tattletale, then at Gru. I was getting the impression neither of them had known. Kaiser spoke. Is it a declaration of war, Undersiders? We just agreed to a truce, if you recall. He was utterly calm, a stark contrast to Hookwolf. Hookwolf was brimming with barely suppressed rage to the point I could picture him leaping across the room and attacking us if someone had so much as dropped the glass. Gru shook his head. I think. I couldn't really tell with the way his darkness shrouded him with his back turned to us. He answered, not interested in war, but I'm not going to stop my teammate from doing what she has to. You mean you can't stop your subordinate? Kaiser mused. Gru didn't have a quick response to that. I suspected he could say Bitch wasn't a subordinate without demoting himself in the eyes of others at the table. Kaiser, Trickster, Faultline, and Coil were all leaders. Gru took a leadership role when needed, but he wasn't in charge of us. Not exactly. Gru clasped his hands in front of him, leaning forward with his elbows on the table. It's not so unusual for a cape to have a pet issue. You should know as much as anyone. How would people react if you forbid them from harassing or hurting gays, Kaiser? I wouldn't. Exactly. Same with her. Word gets around that you're someone who hurts dogs, she'll fuck you up. It's kind of common knowledge around here. Not something I'd pay attention to. I'm more of a cat person. The sardonic comment elicited a few chuckles in the room. I think it's worth paying attention to if it leads to some situations like this, Gru responded, his voice firm. I delegate to my... is that... Okay, no, Kaiser. I delegate to my underlings and trust them to keep out of minor details. Hookwolf had been out of town until recently. He must not have heard. The bullshit was so transparent I couldn't help but wonder if he was baiting us. I'd like to resolve this peacefully, Gru reiterated. Kaiser shook his head with the sound of metal edges scraping on metal. Peace is always preferable, but I can't let an insult like this slide. We'll need restitution before we can put this to rest. Money or blood. Your choice. Bitch made a sound low in her throat. She and Hookwolf weren't the only ones bristling. I looked at the table where Hookwolf sat, with Fenja, Menja, Knight, Fogg, and Krieg. Everyone there looked visibly angry. Then let's sit on it until we're freer to give the matter our full attention. Gru spoke. The truce is in effect and we'll meet again when things are more or less resolved with the ABB. He looked to the others for the confirmation. Will do, Coil replied. Faultline nodded. What do you say? Gru asked Kaiser. Set this aside for now? Kaiser nodded once. Fair. We'll discuss the matter further at our next meeting. Then it's settled. Anything else? Coil asked. Issues, negotiations, requests? There was no reply. Coil took that as answer enough. Then let's conclude the meeting. Thank you for attending. Faultline, could I have a word with you before we leave? There were the sounds of chairs scraping against the floor as people at the table got up. Faultline and Coil accepted. Skidmark's group headed out the door to leave right away, while Kaiser and Purity walked to the table where their underlings sat with their drinks. The travelers loitered around their table, not quite settling in, not leaving. Gru returned to us, but he didn't sit. Let's go. Nobody argued. We stood and left Somers Rock. Skidmark's group was taking their time leaving down one end of the streets, so unspoken we headed in the other direction just to be safe. There was no doubt those guys were spoiling for a fight. They were diametrical, opposites of Kaiser, Coil, and Faultline, hot-headed, reckless, unpredictable. They would start a fight. even knowing they would set every other gang member in the city against them for abusing neutral territory. We were a block away from the pub when Gru spoke. Bitch, do you understand why I'm pissed right now? Why we're pissed, Tattletale added. I guess. Gru paused, as if choosing his next words carefully. I want to be certain you know what you did wrong. Fuck you, she snapped. I get the idea. You don't have to get on my case. Gru glanced at the rest of us, then looked over his shoulder in the direction of the pub. We walked in grim silence, past 3 different stores before he lashed out. He grabbed Bitch by the shoulder, then pulled her backwards to break her stride and put her off balance enough that she stumbled. Before she could regain her footing, he forced her bodily into the recessed area in front of an old bookstore and shoved her against the door, his hands gripping her throat. I looked towards the pub. There was nobody leaving, and nobody looked our way. Biting my lip, I joined Tattletale and Regent in stepping inside the alcove. I was praying Gru knew what he was doing. For several seconds, he just held her there, leaving her to claw for a grip on his arm and glove, kicking ineffectually at his leg. Twice, she looked like she had enough leverage to hit him harder. He used his grip on her throat to pull her forward and then shoved her back against the door again, hard enough to give her coughing fits. She didn't stop fighting as she spoke. His quiet voice hollowed the effect of her powers. I hate this, Rachel. You make me do shit like this. That when I say things like that, I sound like everything I hate most in the world. But that's just the way you play things. It's the only time you're willing to listen. You're hearing what I'm saying? Bitch jabbed at the center of his stomach, but he used the length of his arm to pull his body back enough to avoid the worst of the hit, while still locking onto her throat. He slammed her against the door again. You're hearing me, Rachel? She nodded solemnly, eyes darting in every direction but directly at him. He eased up a fraction, and she was able to gasp for a few breaths. Look me in the eyes, he intoned. She did. Her visor was just an inch from her face, and she couldn't actually see his eyes, but she stared steadily into the dark holes of his skull mask. I wasn't sure if I could have, and he wasn't angry with me. You made me look bad. You made us look bad. I'm not pissed because of what you did to Hookwolf's business. That's you. That's your baggage, your shit. I get that it's par for the course on your with you on the team. I can live with that. You following? Another reluctant nod, not breaking eye contact. I peeked around the corner to make sure this conversation was still private. The travelers were outside the pub now, but they were taking their time leaving. Trickster was smoking a cigarette through the mouth hole of his mask. Gru went on. You know what you did wrong? You didn't fucking tell us. You let me fucking go in there and talk to those guys and caught with my pants down. I had to fucking defend the actions of my team without knowing what the fuck people were talking about. It made me look weak. It made all of us look weak. You want an apology? What do you mean it? I haven't heard an honest apology from you since I met you, and believe me, an insincere apology would only piss me off more right now. So it's your call. You want to try? Bitch didn't answer. I could see her square her shoulders, straighten her head, a change of posture that was subtly challenging. Christ, Rachel. This is your second major fuck-up in the span of 2 weeks. Do I need to talk to the boss and stop? Tattletale cut in. My turn. Gru dropped his hands from Bitch's neck and stepped away, folding his arms as he turned back to her. What had he been saying before Tattletale interrupted? Do I need to talk to the boss to see if we can replace you? If it was, I could see why Tattletale stepped in. You're frustrated. I get it. Tattletale spoke. Bitch was staring in the window of the bookstore, avoiding eye contact while she rubbed her neck. Tattletale went on. You don't feel like you did anything wrong, and if you had another chance to go do things over, you feel like you'd do everything the same way, yet people are still pissed at you. Bitch met Tattletale's eyes. Her tone was a combination of irritation and boredom. And people are taking turns chewing me out and spewing psychobabble shit at me. Tattletale waited, maybe trying to get her composure, to figure out another approach, or to use her powers to dig more information she could use. Or maybe she was waiting to give Bitch the time to think about how she wasn't helping herself with what she was saying. I wasn't sure. I couldn't read her expression. She wasn't smiling or grinning like she usually did, though. Tattletale's tone was more exasperated as she replied. Fine, I'll cut right to the point. Both of your screw-ups in the past week had to do with a lack of communication. If you called to let us know you were heading out to the money early, maybe we could have been anticipated the ambush. If you let us know you'd messed with Hookwolf's dogfighting ring, we'd be more prepared for it tonight. So open your mouth more. Talk to us. Let us know what's going on. All right? Bitch didn't respond, tension standing out in her neck, posture stiff, hands in her pockets. Think on it, Telltale suggested. I checked around the corner again. Trickster was still smoking a cigarette, but he'd looked directly at us. At me. The gorilla thing was too, but the others were looking at Trickster. I think he was talking. It was hard to tell. I think it's time we wrap this up, I informed the others. Eyes on us. We left the nook, with only Bitch's slumped posture giving any indication that anything had gone on. She trailed a few feet behind the rest of us. There was tension, and it wasn't all directed at or coming from her. Gru and Telltale were walking slightly apart from one another. He either hadn't liked when she cut in, or he was angry at himself, but something was bugging one or both of them. Regent had been quiet throughout. From what Lisa had said, she visited me earlier on in the week. He was still getting twinges of pain from his arm. I suspected his current state was a combination of painkillers and a lack of good night's sleep. He had been a part of the recent dialogue, but his silence wasn't helping the mood any either. He hadn't been part of the recent dialogue, my bad. I didn't like this. This friction spoiling the camaraderie of the group, the uncertain undercurrent of tension. I like these guys, even Bitch. I don't know, I suppose it would be a stretch to say I liked her, but I could maybe respect her for what she brought to the table. I knew it would be hard to turn on them, to pull out that grand betrayal and turn their information over to the Protectorate once I had the information I needed, but when I thought on it, I knew I could bite the bullet and do it. I would have less regrets in the long run. I couldn't even be proud of it in the grand scheme of things, maybe. Remember that?
Remember, this Taylor fucking doesn't.
More and more, I was seeing the day I turned that information over and said goodbye to the Undersiders as the day I wanted to transform myself. Start transforming Skitter as a hero into a hero in the public eye, doing what I could to repair my image and redefining Taylor into someone confident, outgoing, and brave. If I cut ties with the Undersiders and take the plunge, I knew I could change myself. But strange as it sounded, I would feel worse about handing their information to the Protectorate if this sort of negativity was what I was leaving behind when I did it. I knew it made no sense, but I wanted to be able to tell myself I'd had one successful set of friendships before I severed the ties for the sake of doing the right thing. I could only hope that the sore feeling would fade. Even when I had friends, it had just been me and Emma. I didn't have enough experience to really know one way or the other, as far as how groups of friends handled these sorts of sore feelings and resentment. It sucked. As I glanced back to Bitch, it struck me that this had to suck worse for her. I felt a twinge of sympathy. I knew what it felt like to be the one alone in the midst of a group of people. Slowing my pace until I was walking beside her, I found myself struggling to find words, make small talk. I wasn't sure how reassure her. I didn't think I could say anything without seeming like I was siding with her on things, or opening a can of worms as far as getting arguments going again. Adding my own voice to Gru's and Tattletale's would only make her feel worse, and I had my suspicions that she wouldn't stand and take it from me the same way she had in the other two. Hookwolf's running a dogfighting ring, I asked, my voice lowered, like making dogs fight? Fight to the death, Bitch answered, almost inaudible. When your only real companions or family in the world were your dogs, I could see where that hit home. I never had a dog, but the way I saw things, dogs were like kids. They were at the mercy of specific people, and if those people decided to abuse that, it was just flat out wrong. You stopped them? She turned her head my way and met my eyes. Made them bleed. I felt goosebumps prickle the back of my neck and arms. I wasn't sure if I would be better or worse if she decided to elaborate. Good, I replied. We didn't say anything more for the rest of the way back. Probably for the best. Hold on. Just want to see how many parts are in this arc. So there are 11. So we'll stop at like 5 points. We'll stop at 5.6 tonight. We're halfway there. Yeah. I have to look like what I missed. Where did you leave off? That's not helpful. We were describing the Nazi people. Oh my god. It's like billions of years away. So basically everyone has set aside a truce until the ABB are dealt with. And Kaiser, who's the leader of the Empire 88, mentions that Bitch destroyed one of his members, whose name was Hookwolf. That was his dogfighting ring that Bitch destroyed in the Brutus interlude. And he's a little pissed off about that. But they basically said that we, decide about it later until the ABB are finished. And as they're walking away, Brian basically has a little heart-to-heart with Bitch and says, like, you made us look weak and you made us look bad, and that wasn't you should have talked to us, and the whole Bakuda incident could have been avoided, and this whole thing could have been avoided if you just spoke to us a bit more. So, yeah. Anyway. Okay. High 5.3. There was a long squeal of feedback, followed by the barely audible sounds of a man clearing his throat. Attention shoppers, please be informed that stores will be closing at 5:30 this evening in cooperation with citywide curfew. Wow. Current events. Make sure to cooperate with authorities at the entrance and exits of the Weymouth Shopping Center and return to your homes by 6 o'clock. Thank you. The crowd of people that had paused in their conversation and meandering to hear the announcement started moving and talking again, like someone had paused the video and pressed play and had pressed the play button to get things started once more. Looked at my dad. Should we go? Be the last-minute rush? Sure, if there's nothing else you want. I was due back at school tomorrow, and my dad had maybe sensed how stressed I was because he offered to take me shopping. It felt a little redundant after having been out with Lisa and the guys a week ago, but it didn't give me the chance to pick up some essentials and spend some quality time with my dad. In the bags my dad was holding, I had a new backpack, some notebooks, pens, and a half dozen books, and a new pair of running shoes. The sort of stuff I wouldn't have bought with Lisa because they were so boring, like the notebooks, or because they were sort of things I took forever deciding on, like the books and shoes. All in all, the trip to the mall was a nice gesture and somehow meant more to me than Lisa treating me to a few $100s worth of clothes. Maybe it was stuff for me. We made our way to the exit, and I was holding back a groan. There was still over a half an hour before the doors were due to close, but there was a crush of bodies at the exit. Maybe half were trying to leave, but the others were gawking. Both inside and outside the glass doors to the mall's entrance, there were soldiers. Their guns were holstered, but they looked pretty intimidating anyways. In midst of the soldiers were two capes, Battery and Shadow Stalker. I knew that members of the Protectorate, the wards, and various volunteers were stationed at places where there were groups of people, especially in areas in and around the ABB's territory. The wards, I suppose, were too young to handle a single location all by themselves, which is probably why Shadow Stalker was in a sidekick role here. I had a lot of time to watch the news as I was on bed rest. Bakudo was living up to what she's saying about maximizing fear and panic by combining unpredictability with grim certainty. Every day there had been reports of anywhere from 1 to 5 bombs going off, and while every single one was probably to the advantage of the ABB in some way, there was no way in telling where she'd hit next or why. One article online had surmised as the military and superhero presence forced the ABB into a corner, the attacks would only escalate. Schools, malls, and offices buildings were all potential targets. Justification enough for an armed presence here at the mall. The upside was that the mall had organized major sales in pretty much every store to keep business going. Maybe not the brightest or most logical thing, but too many businesses and employees were getting by on a day-to-day basis around here. Getting in had been like passing through airport security, getting our bags checked, showing ID, nothing too bad. It had only been manpower from the New Wave standing watches when we arrived, and there hadn't been much of a crowd. There was something more, two attractive, dangerous heroines, both with some controversy around them. As much as I could understand why the heroes were here, I could tell that they were slowing things down as the rubberneckers got in the way of people who were actually trying to leave. Half the military presence that was inside the mall were busy working to keep the crowd back to the doors, and the two heroes in trying to organize people into lines. Progress through the lines was slow, but I admit it was interesting to able to watch Shadowstalker and Battery going about their business from a safe perspective. Battery was a member of the Protectorate. When I'd been starting junior high, she'd been the head of the wards for a brief while, and soon she'd soon after graduated to the Protectorate. I could guess she was 22 or thereabouts now. They didn't fudge the graduation date or anything to make it hard to guess the hero's real age. Her power let her charge up as she stood still and concentrated, with every second spent charging giving her a few seconds of greatly enhanced speed. Some extra strength and some electromagnetic powers. She's Flash. Her costume was white and dark gray, with cobalt blue lines tracing like you might see on a circuit board. Inquiries about whether her teammate Assault was her boyfriend or her brother had been met with coy deflections, leading a small fraction of the local superhero fans to surmise he was both. Any time she did something in public, you could trust the online message board to explode with speculation and theory. That soap opera paparazzi-style drama had never really grabbed my attention. Ignoring the vaguely possible maybe chance that there was something going on there, I thought she was the kind of hero I could look up to. She was nice, she worked hard, and in those inevitable situations where she found herself on TV with some asshole getting in her face about something, she handled things rather well. Battery leaned over to cup her hand over Shadowstalker's ear and whisper something. Shadowstalker nodded and then turned to walk through the glass door to say something to the soldiers stationed outside. Literally through the door. As she did, it turned a little smoky, like she was made of sand and not anything solid. It didn't seem constructive to me. In her shoes, I think I would have stuck to business as usual without giving them more reason to stare. I would have used a door normally. Maybe I was biased. I felt like I should dislike her or hate her on the principle, since she was Gru's self-declared nemesis. Lisa and Alec had explained how Shadowstalker was a vigilante that agreed to join the wards rather than jail, all going too far in the pursuit of justice. She was supposed to be using not only the weapons, but she wasn't. Capes always seemed so much bigger and impressive on the news. Once you looked past the dark gray urban camouflage hood and cape and black painted metal of her mask, Shadowstalker was still a teenage girl, only about as tall as me. Battery was 2 or so inches taller than Shadowstalker or myself, which meant she was still shorter than most of the men in the crowd. Not that I had been involved in cape stuff, I felt like I could look past costumes in the way most didn't. They looked normal, pretty much. Alan, my dad spoke. It's been a long time. I turned to look. I should have been surprised or shocked, but by the time I realized who we'd run into, I felt too deflated. It's good to see you, Danny. I've been meaning to get in touch. Not a problem, my dad laughed easily. He shook the hand of the red-cheeked, red-haired man, Alan Barnes. These days we can count it on as a good thing if we're busy. Is your daughter here? Alan looked around. She was thirsty, so I'm holding our place in line while she's... there she is. Emma joined us, a Diet Sprite in one hand. Should be fucking capitalized. She looked momentarily surprised as she saw me. Then she smiled. Hi, Taylor. I didn't reply. A few moments of awkward silence lingered. We need to get in touch, Danny. Emma's dad smiled. Maybe you could come over for a barbecue sometime, when it's a little warmer. The weather will be perfect for it. I'd like that, my dad agreed. How's work? Better and worse? There's work to be had for the dock workers with cleanup reconstruction efforts. That's good. And your projects? The ferry? I've resigned myself to waiting a few more months before I start making noise again. Mayoral elections are coming summer, and there will be elections for the city council this fall. I'm hoping to see some fresh faces, people who won't dismiss some revival efforts as options. I wish you luck then. You know my firm is there if you need us. Appreciated. Emma turned her attention from idly watching heroes and army at work to our dad's conversations. My dad saw her looking this way and decided to include her in the conversation. So, is Emma still modeling? She is, Alan smiled proudly. And doing quite well. That's not why we're here today. We're just here for the sales, Alan chuckled a little. My daughter wouldn't let me relax the second she heard about it. Huh, us too. Shopping, I mean. Taylor was caught at the edge of one of those explosions around the time this whole scene started, my dad answered. She's been home for a week recuperating. I thought we'd go shopping before she got back in the swing of things. Nothing serious in any way of injuries, I hope? Alan asked. I'm in one piece, I answered, not taking my eyes off Emma. That's good. My God, you're the third person I've known who's affected by this anarchy. One of my partners is in this recovery surgery. Explosion crystallized his arm, turned it to glass. Terrifying, Alan told my dad. When does it end? While our dads talked, Emma and I just stared at each other. Then Emma smiled. It's a look I'd seen so many times in the past few years. It was a smile that greeted me when I came back to school from the hospital back in January, that look that let me know she wasn't done. The same expression that she'd had when she was looking down on me, covered in juice and cola in the stall of the school bathroom. The one she'd been wearing when I'd come out of the showers to find my clothes crammed in the toilets, both my gym clothes and regular ones. The same smile she'd had before she reminded me of how my mom had died in front of everyone. The sound of the impact that was like a splash of water in my face. I felt a twinge of pain that from that gouge one of Bitch's dogs had in my arm when I first met her. Still sore. Emma fell over, bumping into her dad, who dropped the bags he was holding. There were gasps in the crowd among us. Taylor, my dad cried out aghast. My hand was stinging. Outstretched in front of me like I was reaching out to shake someone's hand. It took me a second to connect the dots. I'd hit her? Emma looked at me, eyes wide, mouth open, one hand to the side of her face. I was shocked as what I was as shocked as what I'd done as she was. Not that I felt bad. A part of me wanted to laugh in her face. Weren't expecting that. Miscalculated how I'd react. Hand seized me like an iron grip and spun me around. Shadow Stalker. She interposed between me and Emma. Dark brown eyes glowered at me behind her mask. What was that for? Alan protested. Emma didn't even say anything. I'm so sorry, my dad hurried to explain the superheroine and Emma's dad. She's still recovering from a concussion. It's affected her mood. I didn't expect this to be this extreme. Shadowstalker scolded him. This is not the time or place for arguments. If your daughter is this unwell, then it's your responsibility. I felt like laughing. Part of it was just being giddy at doing something to get back at Emma. The other part was that the whole scenario was so ridiculously upside down. Shadowstalker wasn't really anything special. She was just a teenage girl, lecturing my dad, an adult. The crowd that was watching was seeing Emma as the victim, me as the bad guy. But if you stripped away the costume, if everyone knew the real story, this would all be playing out a little differently. Emma would be the bad guy, and my dad wouldn't be so conciliatory about this girl telling him off. I had the presence of my mind not to laugh aloud. Maybe it was just the adrenaline, the rush that flowed from what I'd just done. Maybe it was the concussion again, but I did not find the conviction to do something else. I pointed at Emma, turned to my dad. You want to know why I hit her? Shadowstalker put one hand on the side of my face, forced me to look at her, stopping me from talking in the process. No, I'm stopping this right here. No arguments, no excuses to why you assaulted someone. We're breaking this up now. Turn around. What? I half laughed, incredulous. Why? Taylor, my dad said, looking drained. Do as she says. It didn't really matter because she forced me to turn around anyways, wrenching my arm until I did, then pulling my arms behind my back. Please, miss, my dad said. This isn't necessary. All capes are bastards. I mean, that is what Worm teaches you.
all superheroes they suck. Hero or villain, everyone with powers just fucking sucks. All capes are bastards. That's the motto of tonight's stream.
Shadow Stalker bound my wrists from what I guess was a plastic wrist tie, too tight. Then she turned to my dad and her voice was hushed. Look at this crowd. These people. They're scared. A place like this with as much suppressed panic, fear, and worry, this many people close together? I don't care if your daughter is an idiot or just ill. She's proven to be volatile in a powder keg situation. It's both dangerous and stupid to have her here. You can cut off the plastic cuffs when she's separated from anyone else she might harm. I'm not dangerous, I protested. Didn't look like it to me. Shadowstalker shook her head and gave a push towards the exit. Go home and be grateful your dad isn't having to post bail for you to sleep in your own room tonight.
Shadowstalker harassed me because I'm a minority. A minority of villains. She then shot me in the leg with her crossbow. Really tying this back into current events, aren't we?
My dad held his bags with one hand so he could help usher me towards the door. He looked over to his shoulder at Ellen. I'm very sorry. It's the concussion. My dad nodded sympathetically. His ruddy cheeks were redder than the attention our scene had drawn. I know, it's all right. Just maybe she should stay home for just a little longer. My dad nodded, embarrassed. I felt bad at that. I felt worse at being let off like a criminal while Shadowstalker gave Emma a hand to help her up. Emma was beaming, smiling one of the widest smiles I'd seen her give despite the red mark on the side of her face. Smiling as much as the way things had turned out, I imagined she was getting the chance to talk with a concerned superheroine. We headed out to the car away from the crowd, the soldiers and Emma. I stood by the open passenger door for 2 minutes before my dad scrounged up some nail clippers to cut the plastic cuffs. I'm not mad, he told me quietly after we settled in, as he started up the car and took us out of the parking garage. Okay. It's perfectly understandable. You're emotionally sensitive after getting knocked around by the explosion, and she still reminds you of what's going on at school. More than you know.
More than you know, I muttered. Hello, using your powers to sting her. Use your powers to sting her with a bee or two. I mean, I don't think she wants to use her powers. Because everyone would be like, hey, Skitter's around here somewhere. I mean, you can't be really that imaginative with, you control bugs. I don't know. Listen, her name is everywhere. I don't think that she would want to use her powers
out in the open, especially with what's going on now.
I don't know.
I looked down at my hands, rubbed my wrist, and where the plastic tie had cut into them. If I didn't tell him now, I don't think I ever would. It's her. Emma. Oh? What? He sounded confused. I didn't have it in me to clarify matters. I just let him think it over. After a long pause, he said, Oh. From the beginning, her and her friends, I added needlessly.
Spider crawl like a big spider. I mean, I don't know.
Tears welled up, unexpected. I hadn't realized I felt like crying. I raised my glasses, rubbed them away, but more came streaming out. Stupid head injury, I muttered. Stupid mood swings. I'm supposed to be better by now. My dad shook his head. Taylor, kiddo, I don't think it's the only reason. He pulled over. What are you doing? I asked, wiping ineffectually at my cheek. We gotta be home before curfew. He undid our seatbelt and pulled me into a hug. Oh, my face against his shoulder. My breath hitched with a sob. It's fine, he reassured me, but we've got time. Take as long as you need.
I'm big fucking spider. I'll read this one. We'll call it a break. And I'll come back and read whatever we can else tonight. Wholesome. Yeah, wholesome shit. Yeah, you're not going to find very many wholesome moments. There are wholesome moments in Worm, but they're few and far between. Oh boy.
High 5.4. A huge pet peeve of mine, being asked to arrive for a specific time, then being made to wait. 15 minutes was just about my limit of my patience. My dad hadn't been waiting for more than 30... My dad and I had been waiting for more than 30 minutes. This has to be intentional, I complained. We've been asked to wait... Oh, I love this chapter. We've been asked to wait in the principal's office a few minutes after we arrived, but the principal hadn't been around. Trying to show they're in a position of power, able to make us wait, my dad agreed. Maybe or we're just waiting for the other girl. I was at an angle where if I slouched my chair just a bit, I could see the front of the office through a gap between the bottom of the blinds and the window. Not long after we'd arrived, Emma and her dad showed up, looking totally casual and unstressed, like a regular day. She isn't even worried. Her dad was her physical opposite. Beyond the red hair they shared, he was big in every sense of the word, taller than average, big around the middle, and while he could speak softly when the situation called for it, he had a powerful voice to call people's attention. Emma just had a biggest chest. Emma's dad was talking to Madison's mom and dad. Only Madison's mom was really petite like she was, but both her mom and dad looked really young. Unlike Emma and her dad, Madison and her parents did look concerned, and I was guessing that some of what Emma's dad was doing was reassured them. Madison in particular was very down at the ground and not really talking, except to respond to what Emma was saying. Sophia was last to arrive. She looked sullen, angry, an expression that reminded me of bitch. The woman who accompanied her was most definitely not her mom. She was blonde and blue-eyed, had a heart-shaped face, and wore navy blue blouse with khakis. The secretary came in to get us from the office not long after. Chin up, Taylor, my dad murmured as I slung my backpack over one shoulder. Look confident because this won't be easy. We may be in the right, but Alan's a partner in a law firm and he's a master manipulator of the system. I nodded. I wasn't getting that impression already. After getting a phone call from my dad, Alan had been the one to call the meeting. We were directed down the hall where the guidance counselor's offices were, a room with an egg-shaped conference table. The trio and their guardians were seated at one end of the table.
Didn't realize there was a wiki for this. Oh yeah, there's a huge wiki for this. Just don't look at it because there's unmarked spoilers. So, yeah, I told this to Vicente last night when he looked up what breed of dog Brutus was, and I was like, don't do that because you're gonna get spoiled big time. No, don't get spoiled. There's so much cool shit I have to show you. No, don't get spoiled.
The trio and their guardians were seated at one end of the table, 7 in total, and we were asked to sit at the other, the tip of the egg. The principal and my teachers all came into the room not long after, filling in the seats between us. Maybe I was reading too much into things after seeing an eerie echo of the situation just 2 days ago with the meeting of the villains, but I noticed that Mr. Gladley sat next to Madison's dad, and the chair next to my dad was left empty. I have an off-topic, well, sort of off-topic, on-topic thing. I remember that my middle school had a Mr. Gladley, and he was like everyone's favorite teacher, but I fucking hated him because he like singled me out on shit. I remember that, and I'm like, man, if only I had cool bug powers, I'd basically be Skitter, but a guy. Not have the superpowered villain friends. That's like the only two things you needed to be Skitter. Have a teacher that everyone likes, that you hate, and have bug powers. That's it. How to be Skitter. I want to have anxiety too.
You'd absolutely have evil. I would. I totally would.
I absolutely would have evil villain friends, and it'd be a lot of fun. Like if superpowers ever became a thing, I would definitely go to like the villain side. Absolutely. I wouldn't be a bad guy. I would just be a bad guy. We would have been completely isolated from the massive people on the other side of the table if Mrs. Knott, my homeroom teacher, hadn't sat at my left. I wondered if she would have if there had been another seat. I was nervous. I had told my dad that I'd missed classes. I hadn't told him how many, but I wanted to repeat bitch's mistake and leave him totally in the... I didn't want to repeat bitch's mistake and leave him totally in the dark. I was worried it would come up, worried this wouldn't go as I hoped, worried I'd find some way to fuck it up. Thank you all for coming, the principal spoke as she sat down, putting a thin folder down in front of her. She was a narrow woman, dirty blonde with a severe bowl cut I could never understand the appeal of. Yeah, Karen. She was dressed like she was attending a funeral, black blouse, sweater, and skirt, and black shoes. We're here to discuss incidents where one of our students has been victimized. She looked down at the folders she brought in. Ms. Haybear? That's me. In the individuals you accused of misconduct are Emma Barnes, Madison Clements, and Sophia Hess. You've been in my office before, Sophia. I just wish it had to do more with the track field and less to do with detention. Sophia mumbled a reply that might have been an agreement. Now, if I'm to understand matters, Emma was attacked outside of school premises by Ms. Haybear, and shortly after she was accused of bullying. Yes, Alan spoke. Her father called me, confronted me, and I thought it best take it to the official channels. That's probably best, the principal agreed. Let's put this matter to rest. And she turned to me and my dad, palms up. What? I asked. Please, what charges would you lay against these three? I laughed a little in disbelief. Nice. So we're called here on short notice without time to prepare, and I'm expected to be ready. Maybe outlining some of the major incidents, then. What about the minor ones? I challenged her. All of the little things that made my day-to-day life so miserable. If you can't remember, I remember. I cut her off. I bent down to the backpack where I'd set at my feet and retrieve a pile of paper. I had to flip through a few seconds before I could divide it into two piles. 6 vicious emails. Sophia pushed me down the stairs when I was near the bottom, making me drop my books, tripped and shoved me no less than 3 times during gym, threw my clothes at me while I was in the shower after gym class had ended, getting them wet. I had to wear my gym clothes for the rest of the morning. In biology, Madison used every excuse she could use to use the pencil sharpener or talk to the teacher, and each time she passed my desk, she pushed everything I had onto the desk floor. I was watching it for a third time. I was watching it for a third time and covered my stuff when she approached, so the 4th trip, she emptied the pencil sharpener onto her hands and dumped the shavings onto my head and desk as she walked by. All 3 of them cornered me after school and took my backpack from me, throwing it in the garbage. I see, the principal made a sympathetic face. Not very pleasant, is it? That's September 8th, I pointed out. My first day back at school last semester. September 9th. Excuse me, sorry, how many entries do I have? How many entries do you have? 1 for pretty much every school day starting last semester. Sorry, I only decided to keep track last semester. September 9th. Other girls in my grade had been encouraged by those 3 to make fun of me. I was wearing the backpack they had thrown in the trash, so every girl that was in it was holding their noses or saying I smelled like garbage. It picked up steam, and by the end of the day, others had joined in on it. I had to change my email address after my inbox filled in just a day with more of the same sorts of things. I had every hateful email that was sent to me. Here, by the way. I put my hands on the pile of papers. May I? Miss Knott asked. I handed her the emails. Eat glass and choke. Looking at you depresses me. Die in a fire, she recited as she turned the pages. Let's not get sidetracked, my dad said. We'll get to everything in time. My daughter was speaking. I wasn't done with September 9th, I said. Let me find my place. Gym class, again. Are you wanting to recount every single incident? The principal asked. I thought you'd want me to. You can't make a fair judgment until you hear everything that's happened. I'm afraid that looks like quite a bit, and some of us have the jobs to get back to this afternoon. Can you pare it down to those that felt most relevant? They're all relevant, I said. Maybe I'd raised my voice because my dad put his hands on my shoulder. I took a breath, and said as calmly as I could, "If it bothers you that you have to listen to all of it, imagine what it feels like to live through it. Maybe you'll just get a fraction of a percent of an idea of what's going on to school of what going to school with them felt like." I looked at the girls. Only Madison looked really upset. Sophia was glaring at me, and Emma managed to look bored, confident. I didn't like that. Alan spoke. "I think we all grasp that it's unpleasant. You've established that, and I thank you for the insight, but how many of those incidents can you prove? Were these emails sent from computers?" Very few school email addresses, mostly throwaway accounts from Hotmail and Yahoo. Worm dated itself. Mrs. Knott replied, as she flipped through the pages. "And for the few school emails accounts that were used, we can't discount the chance that someone had left their account logged in when they left the computer lab." She gave me an apologetic look. "So the emails are off the table," Ellen spoke. "It's not your place to decide that," my dad answered. "A lot of these emails were sent during school hours," I stressed. My heart was pounding. I even marked them with a blue highlighter. "No," the principal spoke. "I agree with Mr. Barnes. Probably for the best that we focus our attention on what we can verify. We can't say who sent these emails and from where." All of my work, all of my hours I'd spent logging events when remembering the events of the day were the last thing I wanted to do. Dash to the winds. I clenched my fist on my lap. "You okay?" my dad murmured in my ear. There was precious little I could actually verify, though. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Gladley approached me. I addressed the room. He verified some things that occurred in class. My desk had been vandalized with scribbles, juice, glue, trash, and other stuff in different days. "Do you remember Mr. Gladley?" Mr. Gladley nodded. "I do." "And after class, do you remember seeing me in the hallway, surrounded by girls, being taunted?" I remember seeing you in the hallway with other girls, yes. If I remember, that was not long after you told me you wanted to handle things on your own." "That is not what I said." I didn't control myself from shouting. "I said I thought that this situation here, with all the parents and teachers gathered, would be a farce, and so far you're not proving me wrong." "Taylor," my dad spoke. He put his hands on one of my clenched fists, then addressed the faculty. "Are you accusing my daughter of making up everything she's noted here?"
Schools be like, if our students were bullied, we would simply ignore, rip to other schools, but we're different.
No, oh. Hold on 1 second, guys. Okay. No, the principal spoke. "But I think that when someone is being victimized, it's possible to embellish events to see harassment when it's done. We want to ensure that these 3 girls get their fair treatment." "Do I started, but my dad squeezed my hand and I shut up. "My daughter deserves fair treatment too, and if even one in 10 of these events did occur, it speaks an ongoing campaign of severe abuses. Does anyone disagree?" "Abuse is a strong word," Alan spoke. "You still haven't proven—" "Alan," my dad interrupted him. "Please, shut up. This isn't a courtroom. Everyone at this table knows what these girls did, and you can't force us to ignore it. Taylor ate dinner at your dining room table 100 times, and Emma did the same at ours. If you're implying Taylor's a liar, say it outright." "I only think she's sensitive, especially after the death of her mother. I shoved the pile of papers off the table. There were 30 or 40 sheets, so it made a good size of cloud of drifting papers." "Don't go there." I spoke, quiet. I could hear myself over the... I could barely hear myself over the buzzing in my ears. "Don't do that. Prove you're at least that human." I saw a smirk on Emma's face before she put her elbows on the table and hid her hands. "In January, my daughter was subjected to one of the most malicious, disgusting pranks I've ever heard." My dad told the principal, ignoring the papers that were still making their way to the floor. "She wound up in the hospital. You looked me in the eyes and promised me that you would look after Taylor and keep an eye out. You absolutely haven't. Mr. Quinlan, my math teacher, spoke. You have to understand, other things demand our attention. There's a gang presence in this school, and we have to deal with serious events like students bringing knives to class, and drug use, and students suffering life-threatening injuries in fights on campus. If we're not aware of certain events, it's hardly intentional. So my daughter's situation isn't serious? That's not what we're saying, the principal answered him, exasperated. Alan spoke. Let's cut to the chase. What would you two like to see happen here at this table that would have you walk away satisfied? My dad turned to me. We briefly talked about this. He said that as a spokesperson for his union, he always walked into discussion with the goal in mind. We established ours. The ball was in our court. Transfer me to Arcadia High. There were a few looks of surprise. I expected you to suggest expulsion, the principal answered. Most would. Fuck no, I said. I pressed my fingers to my temples. Sorry for the swearing. I'm gonna be a little impulsive until I'm over this concussion, but no expulsion, because that just means they can apply to the next closest school, Arcadia, and because they aren't enrolled in this school, it would mean accelerated entry past the waiting list. And that's just rewarding them. Rewarding, the principal spoke. I think she was insulted. Good. Yeah, I said, not caring the least about her pride. Arcadia's a good school. No gangs, no drugs. It has a budget. It has a reputation to maintain. If I were bullied there, I could go to the faculty and get help. None of that's true here. That's all you want? Alan asked. I shook my head. No. If it were up to me, I'd want those three to have in-school suspension for the remaining 2 months of the semester. No privileges either. There won't be any dances, access to school events, computers, or on a spot on teams or clubs. Sophia's one of our best runners in track and field, the principal spoke. I really, really don't care, I replied. Sophia looked at me. Look at Taylor go. Look at our girl growing up. Right in front of our eyes. Why the in-school suspension? Mr. Gladley asked. It would mean someone would have to keep a constant eye on them. Would I have to take summer classes? Madison piped up. There would be our remedial classes if we took this route, yes, the principal spoke. I think it's a little severe. As Mr. Gladley mentioned, it would require resources we don't have. Our staff is stretched thin as is. Suspension's a vacation, I retorted. And it just means they could take a trip over to Arcadia and get revenge on me there. No. I'd rather they got no punishment at all than see them get suspended or expelled. That's an option, Alan joked. Shut up, Alan, my dad replied. To the rest of the table, he said, I don't see anything unrealistic about what my daughter is proposing. Of course you don't, Sophia's guardian spoke. You'd feel differently if the tables were turned. I think it's important that Sophia continues to attend her track and field practices. The sports gives her structures she needs. Denying her would only lead to a decline in her behavior and conduct. Madison's dad added his own 2 cents. I think 2 months suspension is too much. I'm forced to agree on all counts, the principal spoke. As my dad and I moved to protest, she moved her hands to stop us. Given the events that happened in January, and with Mr. Gladley's own admission that there's been incidents in his class, we know there's been some ongoing bullying. I'd like to think my years as an educator that have given me some ability to recognize guilt when I see it, and I'm certain all these girls are guilty of some of what the victims are accusing them of. I'm proposing a 2-week suspension. Weren't you listening to me? I asked, my fist clenched so hard my hands were shaking. I'm not asking for a suspension. That's pretty much the last thing I want. I'm standing by my daughter on this, my dad spoke. I'd say 2 weeks was laughable, given this laundry list of criminal offenses these 2 girls have committed. Except there's nothing funny about this. Your list would mean something if we could back it up with evidence, Alan Raleigh commented. And if it wasn't all over the floor. I thought for a second my dad was going to hit him. Any longer than 2 weeks would mean these girls' academics would suffer to the point where they could fail the year, the principal stated. I don't think that's fair. And my schoolwork hasn't suffered because of them? I asked. The buzzing in my ears was reaching its limit. I realized belatedly that I'd just given her an opening, to raise my missed classes. We're not saying it hasn't, the principal's tone was patient, as if she was talking to a small child. But eye for an eye justice doesn't do any favors. Yeah, fuck them. Let them fail. Who cares? She had mentioned the classes. I wondered if she knew. Is there any justice here? I replied. I'm not seeing it. They're being punished for their misconduct. I just stopped to willfully push the bags away. I think they were reacting to my stress, or my concussion was making me a little less aware of what I was doing with them, because they were pressing in without giving them my order. None of them had entered the school or the conference room, thankfully, but I was getting increasingly worried that my control would slip. If it did, instead of sort of wandering in my general direction or gravitating towards my location, the bud would erupt into a full-fledged swarm. I took a deep breath. Whatever, I said. You know what? Fine. Let them get away with a 2-week vacation as a reward for what they did to me. Maybe if their parents had an ounce of heart or responsibility, they'd find an appropriate punishment. I don't care. Just transfer me to Arcadia. Let me walk away from this. There's not really something I can do, the principal said. There's jurisdictions. Try, I pleaded. Pull some strings, call in favors, talk to friends in other faculties. I don't want to make promises I can't keep, she said, which meant no. I stood up. Taylor, my dad put his hand on my arm. We're not the enemy, the principal spoke. No? I laughed a little, bitter. That's funny, because it looks like you guys, the bullies and the other parents against me and my dad. How many times have you called me by my name today? None. Do you even know why? It's a trick lawyers use. They call their client by their name, but they refer to the other guy as the victim or the offender, depending. Makes your client more identifiable, dehumanizes the other side. He started doing it right off the bat, maybe even before this meeting started, and you unconsciously bought into it. You're being paranoid, the principal spoke. Taylor, I'm sure I've said your name. Fuck you, I snapped. You disgust me. You're a deluded, slimy, self-serving... Taylor. My dad pulled on my arm. Stop. I had to concentrate a second and direct the bugs to go away again. Maybe I'll bring a weapon to school, I said, glaring at them. If I threatened to stab one of these girls, would you at least expel me? Please? Could see Emma's eyes widened at that. Good. Maybe she'd hesitate before hassling me again. Taylor! My dad spoke. He stood up and pulled me into a tight hug, my face against his chest so I couldn't say more. Do I need to call the cops? I heard Alan. For the last time, Alan, shut up, my dad growled. My daughter is right. This has been a joke. I have a friend in the media. I think I'm going to give her a call, email her that list of emails and list of incidents. Maybe pressure from the public would get things done. None. The one time. None. They haven't said Taylor's name at all. They said Miss Haybear at the start, but they never said Taylor. I hope it doesn't come to that, Danny, Alan replied. If you recall, your daughter assaulted and battered Emma just last night. That's in addition to threatening her here. We could press charges. I do have surveillance video from the mall and a signed slip from the teenage superhero and Shadow Stalker that verifies she saw it happen. In what could have provoked a riot. Oh, so that's why Emma had been so confident. She and her dad had an ace up their sleeve. That's mitigating circumstances, my dad protested. She has a concussion. She was provoked. She only hit Emma once. The charges wouldn't stick. No, but the case could drag out for some time. When our families used to have dinner together, do you remember me saying how most cases were resolved? Decided by who would run out of money first, my dad said. Holden clutched me a fraction tighter. I may be a divorce attorney, but the same applies to in criminal cases. We went to the media, he'd press assault charges to drain our bank accounts. Thought we were friends, Alan. My dad replied, his voice strained. We were, but at the end of the day, I have to protect my daughter. Bug him up, yeah. I looked at my teachers, at Mrs. Knott, who I'd even say was my favorite teacher. Don't you see how fucked up this is? He's blackmailing us right in front of you. You can't understand that this is manipulation that has been going out from the beginning? Mrs. Knott frowned. I don't like the sound of it, but we can only comment and act on what happens in school. It's happening right here! You know what I mean. I pulled away. In my haste to get out of the room, I practically kicked down the door. My dad called up to me in the hallway. I'm sorry, he said. Whatever, I said. I'm so not surprised. Let's go home. I shook my head, turning away. No, I need to get going, and I won't be home for dinner. Stop. I paused. I want you to know I love you. This is far from over, and I'll be waiting for you when you come home. Don't give up and don't do anything reckless. I hugged my arms close to my body to get the shaking in my hands to stop. Okay. Left him behind and headed out the front door of the school. Double-checked he hadn't followed and that he couldn't see me. I retrieved one of my disposable cell phones from the front door of my pocket. Lisa picked up partway through the first ring. She always did. One of her little quirks. Hey, how'd it go? I couldn't find a word to reply. That bad? Yeah. What do you need? I want to hit someone. We're gearing up for a raid on the ABB. We didn't bother you about it because you're still recovering. I know you'd be busy with your meeting at school. Want in? Yeah. Good. We're splitting up for a bunch of coordinated attacks with some other groups. You'd be, 1 second. She said something, but I was directed at the phone. I heard the bass of Brian replying. Every team is splitting up. Bit complicated to explain, but yeah. Bitch would be going with 1 or 2 members of the Travelers, some of the Fault Lines crew, and members of the Empire 88. It would do a lot for our peace of mind if you went with. Specifically with the tension between us and the Empire. I can see the bus at the far end of the street approaching. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Alright. Break time. I'll be right back, everyone. Just go take this opportunity to go get yourself some water. Go get yourself something to eat, something to drink. Be right back. Alrighty. I fucking love that chapter so much. It's so fucking good. It's funny. One of our viewers, and I won't say who, messaged me on Discord. The night after we did parts 1 and 2, and they were saying to me like, "Yeah, I don't like Taylor. I don't think that she's like
really. She's kind of not likable because it's the cliche of like, oh, shy, quiet nerd girl who's super smart, but she's bullied to hell and back. I don't think that chapter would have the I've called me out. I'm calling you out. I am calling you out right now because I don't think that that chapter would have the same effect. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know why I'm trying to hide your identity now. Okay, yeah, it's Anna. Yeah, Anna messaged me and she'd tell that. And I don't think that chapter would have the same effect without Taylor being like super self-conscious and shy and quiet from the very beginning. Yeah. Yeah. But you know what? It makes it. Yeah, it would make it. That's what I love about this series so much is that people react in realistic ways to mostly everything. Schools would not give a fuck about this kind of stuff. They would not care. If a star student is a total dick, they would genuinely not give a shit. It's only that Taylor, who's this like basically hidden, quiet girl, is being bullied. Like it's like, okay, who cares? I would be, the chapter would be totally immersion broken if at the end they were like, oh, they're all three of them are getting a suspend, like what Taylor wanted, a 2 month in school suspension. That would just be unrealistic. Schools would never do that. Schools would not give a fuck about that shit. Yeah. Yeah, I love that chapter. I love seeing Taylor develop like that. It's really, really cool. And seeing it again is just even cooler. Anyway. We'll do 2 more chapters and we'll call it a night. Sound good? Yeah, I love. I'm also, for those of you who did not like the school part of Worm, it's sort of. I'm like almost 100% sure that it stops there. Like that's like sort of the end of the school part of Worm. So if you didn't like the school part, we're more or less out of the woods for that. So anyway. We're almost at 100 views in total. That's cool. Very cool. I like that. Like I said, fucking bring the locust. Oh my god. Yeah. Because Taylor could very easily fuck up that entire conference room if she wanted to, like, aside from her dad. That'd be cool to watch. But she's not going to. Taylor's a better person than that. I just like how she was always, like, so angry inside, and she finally let that come out after she found her persona as Skitter. But anyway, enough me rambling about the literary beauty that is Worm. High 5.5. Time was short, so Tattletale was in my room. Actually, you know what? Give me like 1 more second, guys. Hold on. Put a bunch of stink pups inside the rooms. Hold on. Give me just 1 more second. I have to check on something real quick. One moment. Okay. Alright. Let's go. Time was short, so Tattletale was in my room of the loft while I changed. The idea Coyle proposed was that we would mix and match the members of the group so nobody can pull anything with their teammates being hostages to other groups. Gotcha, I replied. I busied myself double-checking the items from the utility compartment. Tattletale reached in and snatched the cell phone. Hey. 1 sec, I'm programming the alarm on your phone. When it goes off, an hour from now you call Gru.
And an hour later, if if we're out that long, we'll be checking in with each other every 15 minutes or so. If someone doesn't pick up, assume they're in trouble.
Oh, I love this fight, this upcoming fight.
It's so many cool things. Okay, I agreed.
I know I'm gonna say that you're gonna be so sick of me hearing that from me by the end. Like, this upcoming part is so cool, but it is.
If you can't pick up the phone for whatever reason, be sure to call it back at the first opportunity. Let us know that you're fine. Got it. I hiked the cloth portion of my armor up around my waist, and began sliding. If I began sliding my arms through the sleeves, the cloth part was form-fitting, and in all, putting it on was like putting on a pair of full-body pantyhose. Not prone to tear, of course, but like pantyhose, it always took longer than I expected.
I wouldn't know.
We'll be using a password system every time we check in case you're taken hostage and forced to answer a call. 2 parts to it. The first part is simple. You give the other person the first letter of one of our names, and the other person might reply with the last. If it winds up being a longer night, move on to other people we might know. So if I said L, A. How about it? How would you respond to B? N. Exactly. The second part's color-based. While you're replying to a call, name an object that's a certain color. Think traffic lights. Green for go, everything okay. Yellow for warning if you're unsure about things. Red for stop, need help. Lets you keep us informed while tipping off the capes that are with you. Without tipping off the capes that are with you. Okay. I'm going to be with a group that has Faultline, Trickster, and the Traveler's Shapeshifter. I'm betting that there will be a few Empire 88 and some of Coil's soldiers too. Shapeshifter? That gorilla with 4 arms from the other night. Only I don't know exactly what she is yet, but she's not quite a shapeshifter. I'm hoping to get a better sense of her abilities by spending some time around her. Ditto for Trickster. Region's coming, so we're contributing some firepower. Kind of. Don't you and Faultline have issues with each other? Lisa grinned. Yep, it's gonna be fun. Pushing her buttons, knowing she can't touch me. I winced. Just be careful. What's Gru doing? Another group. All in all, we'll be coordinating to strike 3 locations simultaneously with 3 different teams in overwhelming force. Hit hard, hit fast, get out of there. If you aren't making much of a dent, don't sweat it. Unless something goes horribly wrong, we'll repeat this process a few more times over the next couple of days. There was a knock on the door, and Brian called from the other side. Just about ready? I zipped up the back of my costume and strapped my armor in place over it, then opened the door and mask in one hand. Ready. Brian, like me, was costumed but didn't have any headgear on. You sure about this? You recovered from the knock you took in the head? No, I admitted. But not entirely, but I'm pissed, and I think I'll be less okay in the long run than if I don't go out and vent somehow. He paused as if he were thinking of some things over. Okay. You're gonna be alright dealing with bitch on your own? I frowned. I'll manage somehow. Don't show any weaknesses, or she won't let up on you.
I figured as much. I agreed.
As we headed for the stairs, I mused that maybe Bitch and I were on the same page today. I was pissed at life in general, feeling just a bit off-kilter that in a way that wasn't 100% the concussion. I pulled my mask on as we headed outside. There was a nondescript van pulled over the front of the door, blocking line of sight for the rest of the street. Bitch and Regent were already inside, waiting. Hey, dork, Regent greeted me. He was in costume, typical except for the shirt he was wearing. Other night it seemed it had been white, but it was a dark gray today. It was still the same slightly elaborate, puffy Renaissance fair style of clothing, though. You can call me Skitter, I won't mind. That's all right, he answered. There's a note of humor in his voice, which I took he was just having fun at my expense. I resolved to ignore him. Bish just angrily stared at me. It was so intense I had to look away, so much for being on the same page. The interior of the van had benches on either side. Since we were in a rush, I had only a second to decide whether I wanted to sit next to Regent and be facing Bitch for the duration of the trip, or plop myself down next to her and the dogs. I opted for the former, hoping I would manage to do or say anything that would get us off on a bad start for the evening. Telltale sat in the passenger seat with Gru driving. As the van pulled out onto the road, she called back to us. Hey, Bitch, Skitter. We're dropping you off first, but we're going to have to walk back to the meeting place. You might be short on time, so walk fast. Cool? Bitch shrugged. Works. No complaints. I added my own 2 cents. I could see where it would be advantageous. Bitch would have time to get her dogs beefed up, and I can gather some bugs. Besides, it gave us something to do. If we had to stand idle for a few minutes, I was pretty sure it would only increase the chances of Bitch finding a reason to pick a fight with me or some of the other villains. Remembering my bugs, I took a few seconds to extend my powers outward and begin gathering them. I was surprised at how far my reach was extending. I generally measured things in city blocks. I'd never been good at eyeballing distances, not me neither, and I would have my range usually sat around 2 blocks. Today I was reaching just shy of 3.5. You tattletale? I asked. Sup? 2 questions. Go for it. What general direction is the spot you're dropping me off? Need to know where to send the bugs. Northwest. I glanced out the tinted windows of the van to judge which direction we were going, then began giving commands to my bugs that fell within my reach. Second question. My power is a fair bit stronger today. Not sure about technique, but I'm extending it a bit further. Any idea why? Can't say. Sorry, I usually don't try to figure it out, but I'm focusing on other things right now. If you really think it's crucial... No. I stopped her. It's not. I'll bug you about it later. I'll bug you about it later. When your attention isn't divided. Pun intended. Ah! Yeah. Yeah. Regent mused. What? Guess not. Never mind. He chuckled a little. Bitch was using her powers on her dogs. It was really my first opportunity seeing it happen from the beginning. It was like seeing a sausage split its casing. Ugh. Only the casing was fur and skin. When the rifts appeared, it wasn't just a muscle spilling out, but spears and ridges of bone. Some of the exposed muscle shriveled into scaly growths, yet they kept growing to the point where the back of the van was feeling crowded. Where did that mass come from? Was it pulled out of thin air? Was she drawing in some kind of energy and converting it into matter? For that matter, if my brain was a radio tower of sorts, pinging every bug for their location on a near constant basis and sending them instructions to override their own brains, where was the energy to keep that coming out from? It's a little discomforting to think about. When Gru stopped the van to let us out, I realized why we were walking. Our stop was a bridge with bus stations on either side. Problem was, it seemed the ABB had decided to cut off this route. The bridge had been reduced to rubble. Large orange and black detour signs with blinking lights and barred entry to the shattered bridge, and similar measures had been used to cordon off the piles of rubble below. Telltale leaned out of the van, open van, and pointed. See that tower there? Looks like a lighthouse. It's an old tourist shop that closed down a decade ago. It's where the merchants, Skidmark and his crew of dealers, hung out before the ABB expanded and forced them out. You're supposed to meet the others there. I looked and saw the building she was pointing at. It didn't look much like a lighthouse, but whatever. Gotcha. Go, Brian said. Good luck. Bitch whistled at her dogs and we headed out to the stairs. We'd had to head down across the street and back up to get where we needed to be. It was weird picking our way through the street of rubble of the destroyed bridge to cross the street. You didn't usually cross the road like this, and the streets were deserted here. The dogs seemed to like the experience, though. I saw Judas's tail wagging as he hoped that from one slab of road to another. I pulled open the door with shattered glass panes and that led to the other set of stairs, letting Bitch and the dogs through. As she passed me, Bitch murmured, "You're angry." I admitted. Yeah, I admitted. Bunch of stuff early this afternoon didn't go the way I wanted. Assholes. Should have hit him. Teach him to fuck with you. I did, I answered. Knocked one of them on her ass last night. Part of the reason things didn't go so hot today. Story of my life. Bonding. We headed up the stairs and towards the lighthouse. My bugs were starting to accumulate. Our detour had given us the flying bugs time to catch up with me. Wasps, moths, houseflies, no-see-ums, a few bees. What are no-see-ums? A few bees and a fair few cockroaches. I have no idea what those even are. I learned my lesson on our last outing. I wasn't going in unprepared and unarmed. As they arrived, I drew bugs close, selecting the best of them. I directed them under my armor in the hollow space, beneath my shoulder pads under my belt, my elbows and wrist guards. in my hair and the concave panel of my armor that covered my spine. They were there if I needed them. I doubt anyone would notice unless I let them. How'd you know I was angry? I asked. Dunno. Look that way. Yeah, but you can't see my face. Well, you're standing, I guess. You're going to have to get on my case about us? No. I'm sorry, I answered. I decided to keep quiet for the rest of our trip to the lighthouse. Interestingly, she almost seemed relaxed as the silence lingered. Her face lost that slightly angry expression as she reached over to scratch Brutus on the side of his neck, a good boy, in what seemed a very natural, casual gesture for what sometimes someone I viewed as anything but. Or at least it would have been normal and casual if the dogs weren't curling the size of small ponies. We reached the lighthouse, and sure enough, there was a group of villains walking. Kaiser was the first and foremost among them. He was decked out head to toe in elaborate, ornate armor with a crown of blades, but the configuration I noticed with the interest was totally different than it had been just 2 days ago. Fenja and Menja stood at either side of him. Only one of the travelers was accompanying in our group, the girl with the sun design on her costume, red suns on the black form-fitting armor, Sun Dancer. Just behind her were 2 members of Fault Line's crew. Neuter was hanging off the wall by his fingertips and toes, and Labyrinth was leaning against the same wall just below him, her arms folded. Neuter was wearing tattered jeans and had dyed his hair a cobalt blue, setting off the orange of his skin. He had a cloth wrap like you'd see a kickboxer use wrapped around his hands and feet.
I've seen the tiny little biting flies. I had no idea what those were. She should just fuck someone up real bad, but you don't see it. Just buy some killer wasps. Yeah! I had no idea what no-see-ums were. I had no idea what those were. I learned something new today. Rounding out our group were 2 men in matching Kevlar armor with balaclavas, visors, and tricked-out assault rifles. Each of the men had a second gun slung over their back. I thought one was another rifle, but I didn't have a good view of the other. Might have pegged a grenade launcher. Coil's men, probably. Fenja or Menja, I wasn't sure, leaned over and whispered in Kaiser's ear. Arrived with less than a minute to spare, Undersiders, he purred. Watch us out, everyone. I paused. I hadn't brought one. I remembered the cell phone. I retrieved it from the compartment, the cluster of bugs I had in there moving automatically out of the way of my hands. If anything, they made it easier to know where my fingers should reach to grab it. Set the time to 44 in 3, 2, 1, set. The attack is scheduled to start in 5 minutes. We'll use this time to get out there, get in position, and decide our methods of attack. Nobody argued. Move out, he directed us. Bitch turned her attention to Brutus, who made a groaning noise as he suddenly swelled. Splits appeared in his skin as he grew another 2 or 3 feet taller at the shoulder, and spikes of bones erupted from his exterior. He stretched, then shook abruptly, spraying all of us with the bloody aftermath of his sudden growth. The reactions of alarm and startled shouts from everyone present, with the exceptions of myself, Bitch, and Labyrinth. Kaiser surprisingly was among them, backing away several steps before he realized Brutus wasn't attacking. There was a bit of swagger in her posture as Bitch walked the 2 steps where Brutus stood, grabbed a spike of bone, and hauled herself onto his back. It was intentional, maybe a bit immature, but she'd made Kaiser flinch. Taking him down a notch like that as soon as he'd assumed control of his impromptu team, probably more of a statement than anyone present could have accompanied with words. As if to drive the point home, she gave Brutus a light kick in the ribs, prompting him to walk in the direction Kaiser had indicated. Judas, Angelica, and I were right behind her. I didn't turn to see how long it took the others to pull themselves together and follow. Do I do one more chapter tonight? Hold on. Let me see if I can end you off on a cliff. If it ends off on a cliffhanger, I'll do it. If not, we'll read the whole attack on the ABB next time. Hold on. Probably do this before stream, but I'm disorganized. Yeah, no, no. It ends on a cliffhanger, so I'll do the next chapter. Gotta leave you guys off something to come back with next week. What happened to overtime? Oh, you're right. What happened to overtime? Of course. Of course. Right. Yeah, we're going into overtime tonight. Just a little bit. I'll read I'll read the next two? Let's see. Nah, I'll read the next one. Because by the time I'm done with that, we're going into overtime. So, you know. Okay. Last one for the night. Hive 5.6. However effective Bitch's power play might have been, it didn't do much help to the tension between the factions making up our group. It hadn't been just Kaiser that got spooked and sprayed with blood. Worst case scenario, if a fight broke out on the group, I was worried that hard feelings that from that one thing could set us against us. I decided to try to remedy that. The Travelers seemed to be the only group present where there wasn't some drama already mucking the waters. Hey, I slowed my pace so I could talk to the girl from the Travelers. What's your name? My code name? Yeah, Sundancer. Her power's really fucking cool. I'm going by Skitter. Couldn't decide on names, so the media sort of picked one for me. You're one of the outsiders, right? Undersiders. I'm new to the team, but honestly, they're alright. Uh-huh. She looked in Bitch's direction. Not as bad as you'd think, I said, smiling. She couldn't see me smile with my mask covering my mouth, but I hoped she could hear the humor in my voice. How's life among the Travelers? She seemed to caught off guard with the question. Took her a few seconds to respond. Intense, violent, lonely. Folks, I want to go into overdrive. I can't help you there. I'm sorry. We can't deja vu tonight. The answer surprised me. She chose the word intense rather than exciting, but it wasn't the strangest part of her answer. Lonely? I wouldn't think that's the case, spending time with teammates. She shrugged. There's stuff going on that makes hanging out less fun than it should be. I'm not going to explain it, so don't ask. I raised my hands, palms up, stopping her. Wasn't going to. I'm just curious what it's like for the other team, since I'm fairly new to this. She relaxed a bit. It's not just the... I can't think of the better word than drama, but drama sounds like an understatement. Whatever. It's not the other stuff that's going on, but it's that we're constantly moving, rarely spending time than a week in one place, you know. I don't, I admitted. I fudged the truth just to be safe. I moved twice as a kid, but I was too young to remember it. For the most part, I grew up here. It gets old having to... She stopped talking as I suddenly was pushed to one side. The tip of Neuter's tail pressed against the center of my chest and moved me back, pushed me against the hood of a dilapidated old car. Hey, I grunted. But he shook his head, pressed a finger to his lip. His blue eyes bore into mine. They were weird eyes. No whites, just azure blue irises that extended from corner to corner with rectangular horizontal pupils. I looked at the others, and they were moving into the corner. Kaiser, Fenja, and Menja had ducked into an alleyway. Bitch and her dogs were disappearing from around the far corner of the same building, making only the scratching noises of the claw against concrete. I gotta take a sip of water. Hey, we're at 5 viewers. Cool. Hello, whoever you are. You came at the last section of the night. Ahead of us, trio of people in ABB colors crossed the street. A guy and a girl who looked like they might have been gang members before Bakuda's hardcore recruitment drive were talking. A team who was around my age trailed behind them, looking too scared and worn out to be anything but one of the new recruits. They were all armed. Overdrive! Machete dangled from the male thug's hand while the girl was toying with a handgun. The scared-looking kid had a baseball bat with nails hammered into it. People really did that? The nail-studded bat? Ask Negan. Just behind them there was a building that had to be our target. It was a warehouse, dirty gray with the letters ABB spray-painted on the and around the loading bay in red and green in elaborate style. When the patrol was gone, Neuter spoke. They've got patrols, and they've tagged the building. That's our target today. He checked his watch. 2 minutes until it's time to move. My girls and I will circle around, Kaiser stated from the cover of the alleyway, attack from all directions. Hey, no, I replied. That's not the deal. We're in groups like this for a reason. That reason flies out the window if we split up like that. I didn't ask for your permission, Kaiser responded, his voice cool.
Without waiting for a response, he turned to leave, Fenja and Menja following him. Gonna stop him? I asked. I could catch up with them. Bitch told us as she rode Brutus back towards our group. Neuter shook his head. Thin lips pressed into a line only accented his strange appearance. Not worth it, and dangerous to fight amongst ourselves in enemy territory. We don't have time anyways. I always imagine Neuter looked like fucking Randall from Monsters, Inc. Bitch, can you call Gru and Telltale let them know? I asked. They can take measures if they want to. She nodded and got her phone out. While Bitch made the call, Neuter beckoned the others to gather in a huddle. Let's talk plan of attack. Skitter, Bitch, the two of you have the experience dealing with these guys, so start us off. I glanced at Bitch. She was busy with the call, and she had been out of action during our last encounter with the ABB, which kind of left her in the dark as far as Bakudo went. It was up to me. That's a good of it, yeah. I always imagine Neuter looked like a human Randall from Monsters, Inc. I silently cleared my throat, then I spoke up. Bakudo liked to set traps, and if this place is important enough to patrol, it's important enough to have some traps. Let me send my bugs in first. I can get the lay of the land, and the bugs will also confuse and distract anyone inside, which should make things easier for you guys. Neuter nodded once. Okay, that's step one. Bitch, can you and your dogs hit the ground floor? I'll go in the second floor window. Bitch gave him a curt nod in response. The bugs won't bite her? Newt answered. No, I answered. Newt asked. No, I answered. Won't bite you either. They couldn't if you tried, Newt answered me, smiling. Funny, if you look past the odd appearance, the blue hair and the weird eyes, the orange skin and the tail, he's actually a pretty good-looking guy. Sundancer, what can you do? Neuter answered. I guess you could say I'm artillery, Sundancer replied, but I've got the same problem Ballistic does, or my other teammate. I'm not sure I can use my powers without hurting a lot of people really badly. Then stay back with Labyrinth. You two be there, cover, ready to retreat, or move in if we run into trouble, Neuter replied. Sounds like you know what you're doing, I commented. Maybe some of Fault Line's has rubbed off on me, he smiled. Then he glanced at his watch. 20 seconds. Neuter glanced at the two soldiers Coil had sent. You two, can you... We're taking position on a rooftop here, the shorter of the two men replied, pointing to the up to the two-story duplex next to us. We'll support you with cover fire. Good. Try not to kill anyone, Greeter said, checking his watch again. 5 seconds. Skitter, start us off. I reached out to all my bugs I'd gathered, minus the ones I kept beneath my costume. I directed them towards the side of the building we were facing. The swarm swept in through windows that were open or broken, and the one open door on the other side of the building, flowing into the hallways. I made sure to spread them out to cover any surface, fleeing or for anything that was out of place or unusual. There was a fair number of people inside, which wasn't a huge surprise, but my bugs were making a lot of contact with bare skin. I realized people gathered in the open areas of the warehouse's ground floor were nearly naked, stripped down to their underwear. It was so unexpected that it threw me off my stride. I shook my head. Oh, God. I shook my head. I couldn't afford to get distracted. Bakudo probably used metals and plastics. And to the superfine sense of the bugs, that was an entirely different texture from the walls. I tried to filter out the usual stuff and get a better feel for just the plastic or metal rings. Just a few feet from the entrance, I found two dome-shaped bulges on either side of the stairwell that led me to the second floor, metal and plastic. There's something here, I said. Give me a second. I took a page out of Gru's playbook and gathered a group of bugs together in a densely packed, vaguely humanoid shape. I moved that collection of bugs through the doors into the place where the little dome sat. The explosion blew a fair-sized chunk out of the exterior wall of the building close to us. The people inside, already nervous at the influx of bugs, started scattering, screaming at running for the exit. Holy shit. Neuter's eyes went wide. Motion detectors, I think. I said, proximity activated. My bugs wouldn't normally set them off. I had to fool them. Bugman, yeah. The ground was too hard for landmines, so I focused on having the remainder of the bugs sweep through the rest of the building, skimming the surface and look for more trouble. I found two more, checked nobody that was near, and used the same method to detonate them. The plumes of flame, smoke, and debris were visible from where we crouched. 20 or 30 people on the ground floor, unarmed and half naked. 10 in the upstairs, armed, I said. Route is as clear of traps as I can get. Go. Bitch lunged into action, Neuter only a few steps behind. He half ran, half crawled, his tail whipping around behind him, presumably to help him keep balance. As Bitch had her dogs crash into and through the closed metal loading bay door, Neuter intercepted the fierce people to leave through the fire exit on the side of the building. He leaped to close 15-foot gaps as fast as I could have thrown a punch, moving from one person to the next, dropping each of them in an instant. Lots of women in that group, and I can only confirm with my eyes what my bugs told me. 9 out of 10 of them in that group, a mix of Asian men and women, were only wearing their underwear. Slave trafficking, prostitution, it's being darker. I felt my skin crawl. As he darted up the side of the building and slipped into an open window like a bolt of greased lightning, I felt Neuter brush past several of my bugs. Each bug that came into contact with him drooped off the wall or out of the sky, falling to the ground alive but stunned. I remembered reading about him on the web. Information had been scarce since Faultline's crew wasn't the type of villain to appear in the papers or on TV, and the concrete details that were out there had been hard to pick apart from the speculation. What I did know was that his body fluids were potent hallucinogens. Even the sweat that accumulated on his skin was apparently enough to send someone off to La La Land, taking only a few seconds for it to be absorbed through the skin. I focused my attention on tracking what was happening inside the building. Neuter was on the second floor, probably dodging gunfire as he moved closer to the group of people who had been in the upstairs office. I had my bugs cluster around them, biting their heads and hands and faces. I sent them crawling into noses, ears, and mouths to disrupt the aim of people who might shoot Neuter. Kaiser, Fenja, and Menja were attacking from the side of the building opposite to us. They had drawn the attention of most armed agents and patrols, leaving Bitch and her dog stranded in the midst of 1 or 2 dozen unarmed, unclothed, panicked people. From what my bugs were sensing, she was giving a lot of commands to her dogs. I realized belatedly that someone had blocked off the route Bitch might have taken to reach the fighting. The edges of offending barriers were thin. Blades? That meant Kaiser would be the one who had blocked her. Was it intentional, or was he cutting off the ABV's escape route? I couldn't sense what Neuter was doing since my bugs couldn't touch him, but I could feel the movement of the air that followed in his wake. I could track the location of the bugs that came into contact with him before they were brought down by the drugs. I knew men were collapsing as Neuter moved into the midst and knocked them each of them out with a touch. 1 or 2 even collapsed without him touching them. Something else? Blood? Spit? Only one remained standing. He and Neuter circled one another. My bugs weren't having much of an effect on him since he was wearing a bandana or something over his face. No, the second person, just behind Neuter. Had I not noticed him? Then the first disappeared and I knew. I grabbed my phone and accessed the contacts and all dialed Bitch. Come on, answer. I whispered to the phone. A handful of my bugs were stunned and a few more squashed as Neuter collapsed on top of them. I directed most of the bugs in the building to distract the attacker, hoping to buy Neuter enough time to get away. It wasn't working. He wasn't moving. Fuck, answer, bitch! What's wrong? Sundancer asked. Neuter's hurt. Labyrinth put her hand on my shoulder and half spun me to face her. She didn't say a word. Her expression barely changed behind the cloth of her mask, but it was still the closest I'd seen to an emotional response from her. I would have said something if Bitch chose that same second to pick up. Bitch, second floor. Neuter's wounded. Only Lee's in the building. There was a long pause before she replied. Lung's here, too.
And that is where we're ending off for the night. Next time, settling it in the ring, brother. Taylor versus Lung, the rematch. Ooh, yeah. The rematch. The long decided rematch next time. Yep. That's where we're ending off for the night. I hope y'all enjoyed. Tomorrow is, of course, Empress Teresa Day, where we worship our Lord and Savior, Teresa, and not read this pile of garbage. But yeah. I hope y'all enjoyed some Warb for the night. Hope I could provide a couple hours of entertainment for y'all. Yeah, if come stick around tomorrow, come watch me lose my sanity reading a shitty book. God King Norman, God Emperor Norman. Yeah. But yeah, thank y'all for coming. Have a safe night, everyone. And I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye, guys.